Not too long ago, we took a look at the Peugeot 5008, a 7-seater SUV MPV crossover kind of thing. But today we look at something a little bit similar, but also a little bit different. This one right here is the 2022 Peugeot 3008, the slightly more 5-seater, a little bit more compact version of the 5008. Today I'm going to show you around this car, and I'm also going to give it a test drive, so stay tuned. Towards the front, it actually is rather similar to a 5008, especially to an untrained eye. You have the same frameless radiator grille right here, the Peugeot logo, which looks as good as always, and also the 3008 monogram. And if you do take note, that 3008, the two zeros in the middle, forms an infinity sign. You get these LED headlights on this one, and you also have that fan-like DRL, which looks really aggressive. Down below is also another accent. It is somewhat of a chin, or at least that's how it looks like. On the side, this is where it gets a little bit different from a 5008. This is more SUV oriented, less of the more MPV look. You're riding on 18-inch rims on this one, and these are wrapped in Connie Cross contact tires, Continental tires. I also love how the headlights do somehow form a shape which makes it look like it's continuing towards the back of the hood with this chrome strip right here. You get some more chrome pieces on this one. Your door handles are partly in chrome. Your wing mirrors are also in chrome with repeaters, by the way, and also this trim that runs around the car, plus on the molding down below. Moving towards the back of the 3008, and what I love about this, aside from these really nice looking claw-like LED taillights, you also have this black trim over here by the tiny wing-like thing, which is very reminiscent of what you would get with a Lexus RX. You also get your Peugeot logo over here, albeit just a little bit smaller, a 3008 badge. Unfortunately though, you do get two extremely fake exhausts down below with no real pipes or tips over there. And once you do open this one up, it is a power tailgate. What you get is a false floor, which you can also raise up to improve your space a little bit. And once that is up, what's cool about this is that not only can you fold down the rear seats 60/40, but you can also lift this false floor up, and there is a latch. That way, if you have to access your spare tire, this cover won't keep falling on you. Speaking of your spare tire, you do get a donut spare tire in there. Powering the Peugeot 3008 is the same engine you get with the 5008, and this one right here is a 1.6 liter Twin Scroll Turbocharged gasoline engine, making 165 horsepower and 240 newton meters of torque. This is actually rather a preppy engine, and I really like it despite its small displacement, and it also sounds pretty good. And this is mated to a 6-speed automatic transmission. Inside a Peugeot 3008, we check the door thud. It sounds not bad. It's better than Japanese cars. And the interior of this car, if you're coming from a 5008, it is exactly the same. You get the same i-cockpit design, very driver oriented, kind of like a jet fighter. Even your steering wheel's flat top and flat bottom, tilt and telescoping too, really tiny, and you don't really have to stretch out that much. It's so close to you. It's actually really good for those with shorter arms. Your 12.3-inch digital instrument cluster, it's so easy to read, it's customizable, and it is also rather low. It kind of acts as somewhat of a heads-up display. You don't really need a heads-up display anymore. You have a 10-inch touchscreen towards the center with a little bit of a learning curve, but you do get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Even your air vents are kind of differently shaped on everywhere you go. You get these, as my friend would say, corporate slacks inside your interior instead of your usual trim. It feels really nice. It's made out of like cloth. And then you get Lambo-inspired buttons, a wireless charging pad, this shifter which looks really futuristic, hill descent control, push button start, and also a drive mode selection switch. You get an electronic parking brake and an honorary sport mode. I'll get to that later in the driving. Two tiny cup holders and a huge bottle holder towards the side. What this car gets different from the 5008 though is that the 5008 gets a wine holder inside this center armrest, but this one unfortunately doesn't. You also get a panoramic sunroof up top and ambient lighting all around you, including on your sunroof. The seats themselves, they are really firm in typical Euro fashion, and I'm not sure if they are made out of real leather or synthetic leather, but they feel really good. Nice red stitching all around it as well, and the adjustments are abundant for both the driver's side and the passenger side. Power adjustable, including height and lumbar. Lumbar only for the driver's side. Now here at the second row, we check the door again. And just like the front, it's way better than what you would get with Japanese cars. Here at the back, space is actually abundant. You get tons of legroom. You also get tons of headroom despite having a panoramic sunroof. The seats are equally as firm as the front, and there seems to be somewhat of a bulge where your butt crack would be, which, yeah, that's kind of odd feeling at first, but you kind of get used to it. Yeah, having a bulge there. Anyway, you get for your toys, you get a really thick armrest, and it's quite wide too, with 2 cup holders, a jug holder towards the side, kind of small though, and towards the center you do get your own air vents, and you also have a USB port. If you want to seat 3 people in this car, you can easily do it, because the car, although not the widest looking on the outside, is actually quite wide in the inside, and your floor is completely flat. One main difference though that the 3008 and the 5008 has is that you don't get the same contraband secret compartment down on the floor that the 5008 gets, unfortunately. Cool thing about this though, your dome light is here towards the back, so when you are reading something like this, it shines towards whatever you are reading. So now we get to drive the Peugeot 3008, and when I first drove this, it's crazy how similar it feels to the 5008. If you didn't tell me which car I was driving and you closed my eyes, I wouldn't know, because even the cabin is very similar. So anyway, driving dynamics wise, the steering wheel, first off, it's incredibly ergonomic. You just instinctively reach for it despite it having a rather unconventional flat top and flat bottom. But the way it's closer to you compared to a regular steering wheel, you really don't have to stretch your arms that much. So over long journeys, it will translate to a more relaxed driving experience. You won't feel as tired as you usually will. Your arms won't feel that sore. The instrument cluster, it's so low that it really does act like a heads-up display, and it really is so good. You don't really have to take your eyes off the road for so long if you do want to look at your speedometer, so that is incredibly perfect. The seats are also really good. They're so supportive. The lumbar support goes crazy amounts forward, so it really, no matter how much curvature that your back has, it can definitely support it. Ride comfort wise, yes, the car is rather firm, but it's not firm enough to upset you or your body. And most importantly, since it is firm, the suspension is tuned towards the firm side, it can decently handle corners, and the steering is surprisingly accurate. Yes, it does feel disconnected, but it is rather accurate. What this car doesn't like to do much though, and it's a little bit worse compared to the 5008 Peugeot, is that the throttle response could be a little bit delayed. There is a slight hesitation, probably from the transmission, not really the engine. And although this car does have sport mode, which I shall turn on now, it tightens it up just a tad bit, so I do want to call this the honorary sport mode button. Once you do get past that hesitation though, the car really does go, and for some reason this 1.6 liter engine sounds pretty good for a 1.6 liter engine. An incredibly strong suit of the Peugeot 3008 is its visibility, except for the back. So all around you see so much, even your wing mirrors are pretty big, and you also get your blind spot monitoring. Speaking of that, by the way, you also get active lane keep assist, and you also have the driver attention warning or monitoring system. Now, while this car does not get adaptive cruise control, you do get a limiter aside from irregular cruise control, which is pretty good. What's kind of odd is the placement of the cruise control stock, which is towards the lower left of your steering wheel, and it is a little bit close to your turn signal indicator. So if it's the first time getting into this car, it could get kind of confusing. But once you get used to it, it's actually pretty good. Another thing that the 3008 does excel in is NVH. We've already talked about harshness earlier, but noise-wise, when you're at the highway at higher speeds, there's almost zero wind noise in this one. It probably is incredibly aerodynamic. However, there is a little bit of tire noise, actually a rather intrusive amount of tire noise sometimes. So maybe if you want a little bit more quiet ride, maybe you can just change out the tires. It's that simple. Anyways, then vibration-wise, there's absolutely no vibration. Even if this car is idling at cold start, it still is pretty good. The previous lineup of Peugeot in the Philippines mainly consisted of diesel cars, and if you do drive this 3008, you might think it's a diesel because of just how efficient it is. In the city, I return around 8.5 kilometers per liter at normal traffic speeds of around 20 kilometers per hour average. However, when the traffic does clear up even further and you're at the highway, you can do 18.5 kilometers per liter. That is absolutely diesel territory right there. The Peugeot 3008, therefore, is a car that slots between a Japanese car and a German car. If you're looking for something like a German alternative without breaking the bank, and you want to get that same, roughly the same amount of refinement, and something that is just a lot more refined than its Japanese counterparts, then the Peugeot 3008 is definitely a car to consider. Price-wise, this comes in at 2,090,000 pesos. Yes, that sounds like a lot for 2022, right? Well, not really. Now, research the prices of the Japanese competitors and you will be pleasantly surprised because this actually costs significantly less than that, and most definitely significantly less than the German competitors. So this is one of those cars that I really do highly urge you to go out on a test drive to see the difference for yourself, and maybe after that test drive you will end up coming home with your very own French car, your Peugeot 3008.